very seldom. Whenever I do Sunday school like this, I like to examine things, and I like to know what the meaning of every verse is, even if it's a short little verse, and I want to know what it all stands for. So somebody next week may have to continue this. We're in the book of Jeremiah, chapter 31, and we're going to begin with verse number 1. And if y'all want to have a discussion, and I hope you do, and let's talk about things. Otherwise, you're going to have to listen to me. You know, I told Danny, something good comes out of most everything. You know, if you really think about it. Y'all know a couple of weeks ago, I crushed the bone here at the end of my thumb. And you know what good come out of it? I cannot button a tie. And I really tried this morning. I mean, I went through some pain, maybe a couple, that was it. So I can't wear a tie. So that's my sign right there. If this one heals up, I'll liable to do that one. Never know. No, I ain't going to do it. All right, Jeremiah 31, verse 1. Let's look at it. At the same time, saith the Lord, I will be the God of all the families of Israel, and they shall be my people. All right, I want to break this down a little bit. At the same time, this points to a time when God would bring restoration and blessings to his people. Now, just like us, Israel had experienced some suffering, judgment, and exile. Why? Because of their disobedience. We too are going to suffer some things because of our disobedience, But God wasn't finished with them. That's a good thing, because he's not finished with us. As long as we have a desire to worship him, and as long as we're willing, God has something for us to do also. All right. The next part of that, I will be the God of all families of Israel. Now, God was reminding Israel that he hadn't abandoned them. His covenant relationship extended to all the families of Israel. God was calling his people back to himself. This also shows that God desires, just like I will be the God of all families, he has a desire to have a relationship with each and every one of us. We're not from Israel. We're not Jews. But yet, God has a desire to have a relationship. And he has a desire to have an intimate relationship. They shall be my people. Now, what does that say? This is as I like to call it, this is the meat of the word right here. God says, in essence, you belong to me, and I am your Father. And I thank God for that today. He doesn't look, even just like with them, he doesn't look at our past. He looks at what we can do from now on. Even after Israel had wandered away, God promised restoration. Their failure, just like ours, did not cancel God's faithfulness, what he had promised to them. Think about how many times we failed God, and yet he still doesn't look at our failures. He looks at our future. So we made it through verse number 1. Everybody's still asleep. Awake. All right. Verse number 2. Thus saith the Lord, the people which were left of the sword found grace in the wilderness, even Israel, when I went to call them to rest. All right, the people which were left of sword. This refers to the people who have survived terrible hardships, danger, and judgment. Now, like I said, Israel had experienced war, suffering, and exile, yet God had preserved a remnant of them. It reminds us that surviving a difficult season is evidence that God has not abandoned us. You know, even when we go through things in life that we don't understand, and we have more things, seems like it's going against us than they are for us, maybe. God still has not abandoned us. He still has a use for us. All right. Found grace in the wilderness. What does the wilderness represent? The wilderness represents a place of difficulty, uncertainty, and pain. That's what the wilderness represents. Do we have wilderness today? Of course we do, yeah. But God says that they found grace there. Sometimes we expect to find God only when everything is going well. Sometimes it's sad to say that people sometimes will only call on God when things are going bad. You know, it's kind of like I've said before. You know, if everything's always going great in life, sun's shining, the birds are singing, you ain't got no aches and bones are hurting and nothing's going on. Do you ever pick up the phone and say, "Hey, Doc, I just want to see how you're doing today"? No, we don't do that. So imagine if everything was always perfect in our life, we would take him for granted. Or I ain't going to say everybody, but most folks would. Most folks would take him for granted. I can't talk this morning. Granted. There we go. All right. You may be going through a wilderness right now. Financial trouble, sickness, grief, family problems, loneliness, and uncertainty. The wilderness may be difficult, but I want you to pay attention to this. But God's grace is still available, no matter what you're going through. All right, and then the last part of that, when I went to cause him to rest, God was simply bringing Israel out of trouble. He was bringing them towards restoration. And one key thing that I picked up on this, the wilderness was not their final destination. Our troubled times sometimes, and just like with them, God still had a plan for them. Anybody got any questions, comments?
I always heard if you didn't have troubles and bad times, you wouldn't appreciate the good times.
That's right. Sure would. I got to throw a little humor here right quick. If they didn't make Chevrolets, some people would be stuck with Fords all the time. I had to do that. All right. Yeah. All right. Jeremiah 31, verse 3. He sure did. Mm-hmm. Yeah. He sure will. We all need to learn to just say thank you every morning, no matter what we went through the night before. And imagine being in not him, but being in a prison cell. You know, they want one like the Gallup Central Prison now with air conditioning, and all that stuff. Yeah, imagine being there and at midnight having enough faith to where you start singing hymns of praise, and just see what happened when they did that. No. Okay. The Lord hath appeared of old unto me, saying, Yea, I have loved thee with an everlasting love. Always, never-ending love. Even when we were out in the world doing all sorts of things, even when I rode by this church right here, and I had no desire at all to ever stop here. The first time I come up here with my mama, I didn't want to come that day. I didn't. And I felt just about as out of place as a cat in a room full of rocking chairs. I just did not want to come. But he still loved me. All right. I have loved thee with an everlasting love. God was reminding Israel that his love for them had not ended. Even though they had sinned, just like we do, and wandered away. His love was not temporary or based on their perfection. Now imagine if his love for us was based on our goodness, our obedience, our perfection, what we did in life to serve him, we'd be in trouble. Big trouble, sure would. God's love is everlasting. Now this also speaks to us today. When we fail, when we fall short, or feel far from God, his love does not just suddenly disappear. As I've always said before, it's not God that walks away from us. It's us. It's we that walk away from him. And the good part about it is, just like with them, when we turn and we realize what we've done, you ain't got to go far to seek him and find him. He's right there. All right. Therefore, with loving kindness have I drawn thee. God does not only love us from a distance, he draws us towards himself. His kindness and his mercy and patience and grace are always there. He calls us back into fellowship with him. When I read this part of this, I think about the prodigal son, how he wandered away from his father. And I'm sure that his father went out every day and he looked just to see if his son was coming home. Can you imagine God looking for us, wondering, hey, when are you going to come back to me? How long are you going to stay in the condition that you're in? That's an awesome thing to me to think about, that he loves me that much. Now, God could have abandoned Israel because of their disobedience, but instead, like I said, he looked over it and he called them home. All right. Everybody sure is mighty quiet. Are they this quiet with you? Okay. Oh, all right. Well, maybe I need to change something. There you go. All right. No. Jeremiah 31, verse 4. Again, I will build thee, and thou shalt be built. O Virgin of Israel, thou shalt again be adored with thy tabrets, and shall go forth in the dances of them that make merry. All right, now. I had to do a lot of different, I had to search a lot of different stuff for this to come up with what I thought it was talking about. All right. Again, this is a verse about restoration, hope, and God's love. God was speaking to Israel after a time of suffering, loss, and judgment. Again, I will build thee. What does, when you build something, you put it together, you put it back together. God was restoring what had been broken. Israel had experienced destruction and hardship, but God promised to rebuild them. This reminds us that God can rebuild us. We may be broken, we may be unworthy, we may have fallen way back, but nothing is too hard for God, and He can rebuild us just like with them. He can rebuild a life, a family, a relationship with your loved ones. Don't ever give up on that. There was a time that I may as well go ahead and say it. There was a time I thought that me and my daughter would never speak again, that she would never have anything to do with me again. And then I got studying, and I thought to myself, no, keep right on praying. Don't give up, because in His time, He'll answer that prayer. Amen. So, don't ever give up. Israel's past failures and suffering did not cancel God's promise or His plans for them. God was telling them that they still had a future. All right? Thou shalt again be adorned. God was promising that the people who had experienced grief would once again rejoice. You think about sometimes when we have things going on, or we have a prayer that we've been praying so long for, how when it happens, when the answer comes, that you thank God, Sometimes those prayers aren't answered the way that we think they should be, or the way that we would like for them to be. But there's always a reason for that, and we have to thank Him for that. All right. That word again in that is an important word. It means that what we had lost wasn't necessarily lost forever. God was promising a new beginning. Sometimes God allows us to go through seasons where everything seems broken. Nothing seems like that it is where it should be. But He can bring beauty even back in something like that, if we just believe in Him.
I read the other day, God sometimes answers our prayers yes, sometimes no, sometimes later.
Mm-hmm.
It's not always immediate that He
Yeah.
answers your prayers.
I know the other night when Marcy come in, and was over here talking with some of the women and stuff, and we stepped back there to the door back there, and she was talking to me, and I told her, I said, Marcy, I said, I want to tell you something. I said, your prayer that you have been asking for may not be a no, it may be a later. Because, you see, we only see what's right in front of us. And we all know what her situation is. But there could be a reason that right now, this moment, that they cannot have children. There's no telling. But just because it is a no right now, doesn't mean, okay, you're never going to have a child. I can't remember, daggone, who was it that was promised a child, but they were real old in age? There we go, and she was Sarah. Yeah, she was way out of childbearing age, and they had probably thought, well, this ain't gonna ever happen. And then look, so it could be a later. All right.
Also, that it could be, got another plan.
Yeah.
It's not always plain yes, no, later. Sometimes it's got, I've seen several people that I know that can't have children, but there's something else in their lives that need to be.
Yeah.
One ended up being a school teacher, and she's got 30 kids, different kids every year.
Yeah.
Or so.
And that's strange, because last week when the plumber was at my house, I told y'all he was a real Christian man, and we talked a lot about God that day. And he was telling me that his wife couldn't have children, she couldn't have children. So they had even looked into in vitro fertilization. But it was gonna cost so much that they couldn't afford it. So we were talking about adoption, so maybe God's plan is for you to have, adopt a child, and so these children need to be
Yeah.
adopted.
All right, Roger's fixing to ring the bell. All right, now he rang the bell. So the race is on. All right, number 5. Thou shalt yet plant vines upon the mountains of Samaria. The planter shall plant and shall eat them as common things. All right. God was speaking to Israel after a time of judgment and suffering. He was promising that their difficult season wouldn't last forever. All right. Here he was telling his people that once again, plant and build. Even though they had experienced destruction and loss, God was not finished with them. Sometimes we look at our present circumstances and think, nothing good can ever happen anymore. But God says, yet, wait, looks, or what you think is finished is not finished according to my plan for you. It's not the end. Upon the mountains of Samaria, now, all right, Samaria had experienced devastation, yet God promises that life will return to the land. He can bring new growth out of places that has experienced destruction. Us. No matter what we have gone through in our life, He can plant something in us. And He can use each one of us. I would have never in a million years thought that He would ever have planted the desire to preach His word. Never would have thought that. Some of y'all probably thinking. But, He did. Yeah, don't ever give up. All right? All right, verse number 6. Thou shalt yet, well, I already done that one. Verse number 6. For there shall be a day that the watchman upon the mountain Ephraim shall cry, Arise ye, and let us go up to Zion unto the Lord God. For thus saith the Lord, sing with gladness for Jacob, and shout among the chief of the nations. Publish ye praise, and say, O Lord, save thy people, the remnant of Israel. It is. All right. See if I can kind of break this down a little bit. All right. Verse speaks about a day of restoration, unity, and returning to God. God was promising that things would change. Israel had experienced judgment and sorrow and separation, but God was willing to tell his people that their difficult season would not last forever. Our difficult seasons are not going to last forever. You think about it. Even if we have a loved one who suddenly dies, unexpected, our suffering may last, but look, his suffering has ended. You know, he has gone on. And that sometimes is hard for us to understand. But I thank God that he is merciful and that our suffering may last for a little while, but one day it won't. And one day we'll go to a place where there won't be any more suffering. Behold, I will bring them from the north country and gather them from the coast of the earth, and with them the blind and the lame, the woman with child, and her that travaileth with a child together. A great company shall return thither. Thou shalt come with weeping and with supplications. Will I lead them? I will cause them to walk by the rivers of water in a straight way, wherein they shall not stumble. For I am a father to Israel, and Ephraim is my firstborn. All right, here what is he saying? Even after all that they have gone through, he's going to cause them to walk by rivers of water, which means that, to me, it means that even though we may be in a time over here to where, or they were in a time where everything seemed desolate, seemed there was no hope, the river of water represents a renewing. To me, you know, if you see a place that's desolate and dry and barren, and you plant it and you water it, that place becomes alive again. And that's what he was talking about with them. You know, they're not going to always walk in a dry, barren place. Hear the word of the Lord, O ye nations, and declare it in the isles afar off, and say, He that scareth Israel will gather him and keep him as a shepherd does his flock. He is going to bring them back. He is going to restore them. Even though they were scattered and lost for a time, he is going to bring them back into his fold. For the Lord hath redeemed Jacob and ransomed him from the hand of him that was stronger than he. All right, I got this. Verse number 12, Therefore they shall come and sing in the heights of Zion, and shall flow together to the goodness of the Lord. for wheat and for wine and for oil and for the young of the flock and of the herd, and their soul shall be as a watered garden, and they shall not sorrow any more at all. That says a lot right there. We have a promise one day that nothing else on the earth can even come close to, you know. I don't know exactly how to describe that verse right there, and to me yeah. Then shall the virgin rejoice in the dance, both young men and old together. Ain't gonna be no dancing. For I will turn their mourning into joy, and will comfort them and make them rejoice from their sorrow. He's gonna comfort us. He still does comfort us. He is a God that at midnight hour, when you feel like there's nobody around, He's there with you. And He comforts you and He speaks to you. I say all the time, that night that they carried me up to UNC Chapel Hill, and I got there like 3 o'clock in the morning. And when everybody walked out of the intensive care unit, there I lay. And I thought myself, you know, nobody even knows that I'm right here. Because I had originally called my brother and told him I was going to Rex. Well, that was just a pit stop. That was the wrong place. And so there I lay. And I had one of my little pity parties, you know. God, why am I up here? Nobody knows. Nobody's with me. And that little voice, that little reassuring voice, you ain't by yourself. I'm right here with you. You know. All right.
You know, what son said it for me, that Psalm, that verse of the Psalm, I'm not sure what number it says, weeping may endure for a night, but joy cometh in the morning. And that just don't mean just the morning or that day, it means
Anytime. Yeah. Sure
we
does.
go through a lot in this life, but joy will come. And
Yeah.
And what did you say about dance? I didn't hear.
Oh, I was just kidding where it said dance, something about old men. No, old men don't dance. No. Well, yeah. Mm, yeah. Well, I know we can, but I was talking about, you know, yeah, I ain't gonna be dancing. It's kind of like, you know, that saying white men can't jump. All right, last one. Yeah, no, I'm gonna run then. I will. What is that word? Who? Satiate. Okay. The soul of the. I'm gonna be satiated. How about fattiated? That kind of same thing. Chicken pastry. Oh, you get that feeling. So now instead of saying I'm full, I can say I'm satiated. Well, I had to remember that. All right, Roger, I'm fixing to quit. All right. Well, we did get through it. You know, y'all, when I do, like I say, when I do something like this, if the Bible says, and Paul went down by the river to see Jim, I want to know why he went down there. You know, I don't want to just read it and say, okay, he went. I want to know why he went. And that's what I try to do here. I try to break the verses down, and sometimes they're long, but I hope y'all got something out of it, and thank y'all. Okay. There's always one. right there. Oh, all that is, it ain't a Band-Aid. I'll show you. All it is something that you put on your finger that helps turn pages. That's what it is. I give Brother Danny one. If you got something, you know, and the paper's slick, you just do it like that right there, and it helps turn the page. Well, I tried that, and then that lasted too long. My fingers were sticky later on. It pulled out too much money. All right, thank y'all a whole lot. Appreciate it.